how to create a modern looking dashboard in Excel. This is what we're going to see in today's video, step by step from scratch, through a raw data set that we're going to transform into a table, and then we're going to make some pivot tables to help us out, make some analysis, and then create the dashboard itself. And it's a dynamically dashboard in Excel. Whenever you choose here any option in the slicer, as you guys can see, the dashboard is automatically updated for you, following the criteria that we just selected here before the option. We have here the balance as a chart, where we can see the balance through the months. We also have here the cash in and the cash out chart. We also have a beautiful modern looking map chart in Excel, where we can see the cash in per state, and also here to the left, area chart with a line chart. So basically here we have a combo chart. Let's go now and find out how can we do this dashboard right here in Excel. Let's go. The first thing that we need to create any type of dashboard in Excel is to have a data set. And then from the data set, we can create any type of dashboard. So it's important to have a data set. And here I have a large one with a bunch of rows and a couple of columns. And you can also download this Excel file for free. Just click in the link in the description down below. As the first column here, and as the informations I have the date, the type, cash in or cash out. I also have the category, the total, and the state. Here we can basically see that it's a report about the cash flow of the company, for example. The first thing that we can realize here is we have a bunch of different rows and a bunch of different informations, and I can barely see anything here. I can't do any type of analysis, just see this raw data set. So this is why it's important to use pivot tables here in Excel, and the pivot tables can actually help us to create the dashboard. So this is an important step, okay? But anyway, the first important step to do is to have a data set itself. And then from the data set, we can take this data set and transform it into a table, because after we transform the data set into a table, we can create the pivot tables and then the dashboard. Later on, I'm going to explain to you guys why it's important to use the pivot tables in Excel, okay? But let's do this second step, that is to transform, to format our data set as a table itself. Let me click here anywhere in any cell within the data set, of course, and then I can click Insert, Table, and my table has headers. Okay, yes, it has headers, so let's check this box here, and then I can click OK. So this is the table that I'm going to use to build and to create, to make the pivot tables itself. You can also change the color, for example, and the layout. If you want to do it, you can just click here in the table design and choose another one, such as an orange or a yellow one, and so on, etc. But I'm going to stay with this pattern right here, this extender, okay? Now, why is it important we already have here a table, so why is it important now to create the pivot tables itself? Because as I said before in the beginning of the video, through this raw data set that we have here, is harder to take any type of analysis here, because we have a lot of different informations, a bunch of different rows. So I can barely take any type of analysis here. I can see if it's a good thing that is happening here, or if it's a bad thing, you name it. So this is why it's important to use the pivot table. And let me ask you a question, and the pivot table can help you with that. What is the total cash in income? Okay, so I'll add two criteria here. The total income for the services category into the Nevada state, for example. So as you guys can see here, I have 4 different criteria to do the analysis. The first one is the total, and then it needs to be a cash in or an income, also to the category services and to the state of Nevada, for example. So 4 different categories, 4 different conditions to do it. Maybe it can be a little bit tricky to do it through functions or formulas here in Excel, and this is why we have the pivot tables, because it can slice and dice the data for us. It can take a large data set and break into small data sets, and that way we can make specific analysis like this one that I give as an example. So let's start creating here the first pivot table. I just can click here in the Insert tab, and then the pivot table. I can either select the option new worksheet or existing worksheet. I'm going to choose the first option, new worksheet, and then I can click here, OK. Simple as that. And as you guys can see, Excel just add for me here a new sheet. Of course, I can click here, hold and drag to the right to just organize it better, and then right click, rename. I can type in here analysis. Analysis. OK. Here to the left, I have the pivot table itself. It's where we're going to see the analysis that we can create. And here we have the pivot table fields, where we can see each one of the columns that our table has. For example, the date, the type, the category, the total, and the state. And here below we have the fields, where we can basically take any category, any column that we have before, click, hold, and drop here in each one of these areas. The filter, the columns, the rows, or even the values. How can I do it? For what? How it works? So this is the question. So let's say you want to know each one of the months that you have from January up to December, for example, and you want to also know the cash in and the cash out for each one of the months. You can do it easily with this pivot table here. So let's say each one of the rows, you're gonna need to have a different month. So we can click here in the date, click, hold, and drag, and drop here into the area of the rows, like this. And as you guys can see here to the left, the pivot table awareness is showing me here the date. I can, let's say, click here in this plus sign, 2024, and then I can select a quarter. And more specific yet, I can click, let's say, in a month, May, for example. And as you guys can see, now I have the date in a specific way. But I don't need to have all these informations here. I don't want to see the quarters, I don't want to see the years, I just want to see the months. Of course, the year is important, but we're gonna use the year to filter the dashboard later on the video, okay? We're gonna have the filter in the dashboard itself to select and to filter each one of the years that we have. So let's get back here to the right, and I can, let's say, I don't want to use the year, neither the quarters, and neither the date. So I can take each one of these things that I don't want to use, click, hold, and drag out, basically over the cells here. Drop here, click, hold in the quarters, and drop out, click in the date, and drag out too. And we just stay here with the months. And now we have, of course, just the months in the pivot table itself. I want to know the total income and the total outcome for each one of the months that we have. To do it, I can basically create as the column B the income, for example, and the column C the outcome. To do it, let me come back here to the pivot table fields, and I'm gonna take the type and use as columns, for example. Now I have here a column to the cash in and another one to the cash out. Now to fill it in with the values that correspond to the cash in and of course the cash out, I can take the total and then just release here in the values area like this. And we're basically done with our first analysis here through the pivot table. Now we can see the cash in and the cash out for each one of the months that we have. One thing that I can do here, I don't want to use this run total right here and neither this run right here in the row 17. Okay, so I can read it off the last column and the last row. To do it, I can right click in the pivot table and I can go to the pivot table options, total and filters. And these grand totals right here, I can just uncheck these two boxes that I have, these two options. Okay, and that's it. So we're done with the first analysis. Another analysis that we can do here, let's say, I want to know, let me come back here to the dataset, how much each one of the categories that I have just receive in cash in, for example. What is the total of each one of the categories? What is the total per category, for example? I can click here, insert, pivot table, and I can create another one, but now I'm going to select the second option, existing worksheet. I can click here in this upper arrow, clicking analysis and place just to the side of there's another one that we created before. Down arrow, okay, and here we got the second pivot table. As the second pivot table, I want to do some different analysis here. I want to use the category as rows, and now I have each one of the categories, But here we have a problem because we have basically all the categories. We have the categories that corresponds to the cash in and also to the cash out. So let's say employees is a category that corresponds that match with the cash out, not with the cash in that I want to see. So to read it off, the categories that doesn't correspond properly with what I want to see, I can use here the filters field to help me with this request, let's say that way. But before we do it, I can take here the total and drop to the values like this. And now I can take, let's say, the type and use as a filter because now here just above the pivot table, I can click here in this down arrow and select just the cash in, for example. And now I can click OK, and we have the correct result right now. Right click here again in the pivot table, and I'm going to do the same thing as before. Pivot table options, total, and read it off the total, the grand total of the rows and of the columns. Okay, now we're done with the second pivot table. I can create another pivot table here that is, let's say, instead of using now each one of the categories and see the total and using as the criteria the cash in, I can use now as condition the cash out. Let me come back to the data set and create another pivot table here. Existing worksheet, and I can select here. I'm basically doing the same thing as before. Just place here to the side. Okay. Now with this new pivot table right here, the third one, I can use basically the same thing. So as filter, I'm going to use type. As value, I'm going to use total. And as rows, I'm going to use category like this. And I'm going to filter just the cash out this time. Okay, so here we got the second pivot table. Another analysis that we can do here is, let's say, about the states, concerning here the states. I want to know basically the cash in, the income for each one of these states to see what is the state that we have the largest income or something like this. I think it's important analysis to do. Insert, pivot table, existing worksheet, upper arrow, analysis, just here to the side, down arrow, okay. And for this fourth one right here, I can use as the rows the state, like this. I can use as the values the total itself, right here. But the problem is the same right here. These values corresponds to the income and to the outcome. So we need to filter here. Let me take the type as the filters, okay, like this. And now I can just choose the cash in option, okay. And let's read it off this grand total right here because I don't want to use it. So pivot table options, total and filters, and read it off these two grand total options. Okay, like this, and we're done. Now, before we go to the dashboard itself, I need to solve here a problem that can happen to you too. So let's take a look here into this last pivot table where I have these states. Here, I want to use a map chart in Excel to help me visualize this data. Let's see if we can do it through the pivot table itself. I'm going to select here everything. Let me just close this panel right here. Okay. Now I'm going to go to the Insert tab and choose the chart that I'm going to use, like such as the map, for example, and click here in the map chart. And as you guys can see, I got here an error message. You can't create this chart type with data inside a pivot table. Okay, Excel. So let me just click here. Okay. And as you guys can see, we got an error. This might happen in Excel, okay? And as we want to use the map chart and another of different charts in Excel to make our dashboard a little bit more modern and pleasant to look at, we need to do some trick here. We basically gonna need to extract to the side all the values that we have within each one of the pivot tables. Yeah, of course, you don't need to do it. I'm gonna do it because I want to build a map chart. I want to build some modern looking chart in Excel. So in order to do it, I need to do this trick right here. I need to extract off everything that we have within the data set, the pivot tables, to the side to make sure we can do what we need to do here, okay? It's not necessary. It's necessary in this scenario right here, where we're gonna build this modern looking dashboard in Excel. So let's start to do this, okay? Let me just click here in the column D, for example, to create more space in between each one of the pivot tables. So we need to add new columns here. In order to do it, right click, insert again, right click, insert again, right click, insert. One more time, insert. Maybe it's not good yet. Again, now I think it's good. I can, of course, resize here the size of the column D. Click, hold, just in between the column D and the column E. I can click, hold, and drag to the left in order to make it smaller like this. And here, something that I'm going to do is very simple. Equal sign, and then I need to call the cell that I want to extract off to the side. So equal sign A5. This is the cell that I want to extract off to the side, or basically everything that we have within the pivot table, okay? Enter. Now I can press, or even I can click here in the down right corner of the cell and hold and drag down to make sure all the rows now contain the same formula. And we're done for the first row. And for the second and the third one, I can Control C to copy, click here to the side, Control V, and again Control V. Okay, so in this first column we have the months, or the month, and also we have here the cash in. Here we have the cash out, and I can also add here and use in the column H as a balance itself. So balance or a remainder value, something like this. Okay, equal sign as the balance. I want to know of course, the balance, the remainder value between the cash in and the cash out. So basically, I'm going to do here simple math. Cash in minus cash out equal sign cash in minus cash out. Enter. But here to the second row, I'm going to do something different here. Just to do the same thing, basically the cash in minus the cash out, but I want to add it up with the previous value. So equal sign cash in minus cash out, add to the previous value. Enter. Now I can click in the down right corner of the cell, hold and drag down like this, and we're done. Now we have the month, cash in, cash out, and the balance. Or the, okay, I think it's balance, the way it's called. We can do the same thing here to the second pivot table. Click in the L column, insert again, insert again, insert. Okay, now I can just move it to the left to make sure the column L it's a little bit smaller. And equal sign, I'm gonna do the same thing, equal sign J4, I think, yes, okay. Enter, Control C, select here everything, Control V. I just selected the area where I'm gonna paste this copy that I did. Okay, so we did here. Here we have basically the categories. And in this column right here, we have the total, or the cash in, but I can call it total. I'm going to do the same thing here to the third one. Right click, insert, right click, insert. One more time, insert. Here is going to be equal sign P4. Here we're going to have the categories again. And here the total. Again, copy, Control C, select everything, Control V. Oh, we just forgot to read it off the grand total here. So right click, pivot table options, totals, and read it off. Okay. Now the last one, I'm gonna do the same exactly thing. Equal V4. Enter. Control C, select the area. Control V. Here we have the states, and here we have the total income. Like this. And we're done. Now we can move on and create the dashboard itself. And in order to create the dashboard, I can click here in a new sheet, right click, rename, and I can give it the name dashboard. And here we have a blank spreadsheet. Now, the first thing that I always like to start with is to resize some columns, some specific columns to help us to place each one of the charts that we're going to use. I want to select the column A, the first column, and then I can also select the column E, for example, but I need to select both at the same time. To do it, I can press and hold the Control key, select the E column, and I also want to select the J column, and also the R column, and also the X column that is here to the right. You can, let's say, use here this bar here to move to the right, okay? I can select also here the column X. So A, E, J, R, X. Now I can click here in the column E, for example, right click And then column width, I can change to 2. Okay, and here we got now some change in the background. Another thing that we can do here now is to place the area of the charts that we're going to use. So maybe one is going to be here, another one here, another one can be here, and so on, so on. So we can now create basically the spots where each one of the charts is going to be placed at. Let's start let's do it with shape in Excel that is here. Insert, illustrations, shapes, and I can use maybe a rectangle with rounded corners. I can click here and I can place this one just right here. And the column E, for example, the column A are going to be blank. And the first row here, of course, is also going to be blank. And the row 13 is also going to be blank. We can follow this pattern, okay? Let me select now this shape right here. And as you guys can see here, I have basically a different circle color here where I can click, hold, and drag in to make it rounder, and drag out to make it sharper in the corners. I'm gonna choose like this, maybe. Okay. Now I can go to the shape format, shape effects, give it a shadow like this, the first option, bottom right. Okay, and also shape outline, black one, shape view, white. In the shape outline, there's another thing that I can do here, is clicking the weight and choose the half here, 1/2 half, like this. And yeah, one important thing here is to click here to save your spreadsheet, okay? We already got here the first spot, the first area of the chart. Now I can click, Control C, Control V to copy and paste, and I can put it and place just here to the side. But here, this one right here is gonna go all the way to the column R. Of course, you're gonna leave the column R in blank. I can just change here the corners a little bit. Again, Control C, Control V. Now with this one, I can place here just underneath this tool that we have, and just move it or increase the size all the way to the row 28, like this. And I'm gonna make it a little bit smaller to the left, like this. Control C, Control V. And I'm gonna place another one to the right and make it a little bit smaller, like this. Now the last one, I can copy and paste it again. And this one right here is gonna be placed just here to the right. And to the column X, to the row 28, yes, like this. So basically we're done with the area that we're gonna use into our dashboard itself. Now that we finish this first part of the dashboard, that is the background, we can read it off these grind lines that we have, that is basically split the rows, divide the rows and the columns. So I can click here in the view tab and uncheck this box grid lines. Okay, now we have, let's say, a more blank space here into the dashboard itself. Now we can start and create the charts, the graphs that we're gonna use here. And I want you to start with an interesting one, that is the slicer, because the slicer is the thing that is gonna be responsible to filter and all the dashboard all the data that we're gonna have in the dashboard. As I said before, I don't know if you guys remember, but we have here the year 2023, 2024, 25, 26, up to 2028. It's important to make sure we can filter the dashboard with these informations, with these conditions. To do it, I can click in basically any pivot table that I have, and then I can go to the pivot table, analyze, and insert slicer. I can click here and choose date, or maybe, to be more specific, years, like this. Okay, now we got here our first and only slicer that we're gonna use in the dashboard itself. Here we have basically 3 different problems with this slicer here. The first one is, I don't want to use this header, so I need to read it off the header. Let me right click here and slicer settings, display headers, no, okay. So it's much better. Another problem that we have here, we have some basically blank buttons. I don't want to display and to show here these blank options, so I can read it off it too. Right click, slicer settings, and let me uncheck everything here to the right and hide items with no data. Okay, again, and that's it. Another thing, interesting thing that we can do here is I can click here in the slicer and use 2 columns instead of just one, because we now have a different design right here, a different layout. And the third problem that we have, if let's say I want to filter all the pivot tables that I have and see just the year, the data that corresponds to the year 2026, I can click here, and as you guys can see, the first pivot table just automatically change and update for me all the values. But if you take a look here to the another pivot tables that we have, even if I click here in any different button into the slicer, nothing happens here. This is why we need to right click in the slicer, and I need to go here to report connections. We basically need to connect the slicer with all the pivot tables that we have. So let me just check all these pivot tables here because I want to connect check this slicer with all the pivot tables, and then I can click OK. Now, yeah, it's done. So whenever I choose here one option in the slicer, all the pivot tables that we have is going to be automatically changed and filtered. Now I can right click here, cut, and then dashboard. I can, let's say, click in the A1 cell, right click, and paste the slicer. This slicer I can use here in this first spot that we just create. Let me come back here to the slicer options, and the height I can use maybe 0.5. No, it's too large. Maybe 0.4. Okay, I think it's good. One thing that I can do here is just make it a little bit smaller, and using the keyboard key I can move it to the right and move a little bit up. And the fourth problem that we have here with the slicer is maybe the design. I don't want to use this specific and this standard design that Excel's given me. So maybe I can click here in the slicer, and I can go to the slicer and choose another style. Maybe I can do it, maybe not. Because as you guys can see here, I have, of course, a lot of different slicers that I can use, like this orange right here. That is a beautiful one. But I don't want to use this specific layout here. So I have two options. One, to use, of course, the designs that I have here in Excel, the standards one, or I can create my own design. And this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to create my own custom design to the slicer. Let me click in the slicer, and then I can go to slicer, just click here in this down arrow, and you can click in new slicer style. I'm gonna choose here this first option because I just did it before. I'm gonna show you guys how I did it, but I just want to show here the final result. Look, it's a different style with no borders, no background. Basically, it's a more beautiful one, at least in my opinion, okay? You can build your own with your own colors and so on. Let me click here in the slicer, and if you just click before in new slice style, basically you are in this screen right here. You can choose this first option, whole slicer, and of course you can start with give your slicer a name, so new slicer, for example, and then slicer element, the first option. I can click format, and the only two things that I'm going to select here is font style, bold, color, black. And then fill, I'm going to choose a white fill. Okay. Now the third option, selected item with data, format as the font. The same thing as before, bold and black, and fill. I'm going to choose here a blue one. You can choose custom colors, just click here, more colors, and you can use either standard, and I have these options right here, or the custom one, where you can create your own custom colors. I'm using just this blue right here, okay? And then you can click OK, OK it again. And then here the unselected item with data, you can click format. And as the fill, you can choose a gray one, for example, like myself here. And as the font, bold, and let's say a darker gray or a light black. Okay. Now this option right here, over it, select item with data, format. Again, bold and black as the font, and the fill, I'm going to use this yellow one here. Okay, and here hovered unselected item with data is exactly the same as before. So yellow one as the fill and as the font bold and black. Okay, okay, and here you got your slicer, and it's important too. After you do it, you're gonna click OK, and again you need to select the slicer, came back to the slicer, and select the style that you will create. Okay, to make sure you can assign the design that you did into the slicer itself. After we do the slicer, we can give our dashboard a title or a header, and I can basically place here. So let's say cash flow dashboard, for example. Let me click here in the insert tab, and then text box. I'm gonna place it here, and it's gonna be cash flow enter dashboard like this. I can select everything here. Home tab. I can increase the font size, 18 maybe. I can centralize in the middle and align everyone, put everyone here in bold, everything in bold. And I can go to the shape format, shape outline, no outline, shape fill, no fill, like this. Basically, the first spot here is done, but we need to actually do the second one, the third one, and so on, so on. But the first part of our dashboard is done, and it's already looking good here. Now to create the charts that we're gonna use, let's create all the charts, and then we can place each one of the charts in their specific place, and then we can move on and make some changes in the layout and the design of each one of the charts. Let's start here. Let's get back actually to the analysis, and I'm gonna start with this first data that I have here. I can select everything, and then as we have the month as a condition, or I mean, each one of the values change through the date, through the month, through the year, through the weeks, we can use a line or an area chart to help us. So here's a tip. Of course, you don't need to always use a area or a line chart when you have date. But if you have date, you can of course use an area or a line chart. It's a good chart to use when you have dates. It can be month, years, weeks, and so on, so on. So I just select here everything, and then I can go to the Insert tab, and I can choose the option. Actually, I don't want to select the last column, just the first one, the second one, and the third one, like this. The last column we're gonna use after. So let me select here this first three columns. Insert. I'm gonna use area chart like this one right here. Right click, cut, came back to the dashboard, right click in any cell and paste. This one right here is gonna be just here down below. It's good to place the chart just over the rectangles that we have. Let's get back to the analysis. Now it's time to use the balance. And with the balance column selected, I can press and hold the Control key and select the first column, the month. Now I can go to the Insert tab and use here. I know, as I said before, when you have months, years, date in general, you can use line or area chart. But here I'm going to do something different. I'm going to use a column chart, like this. Right click, cut, go to the dashboard, right click in any cell, and paste here. It's important to place the chart just exactly over the rectangle that you have. I can, in the analysis now, I came back. I'm gonna create here a bar chart. A bar chart is a chart that is actually in the x-axis. A column chart is a chart that grows into the y-axis. So here I'm gonna use a bar chart to see the categories and the total. I can select here everything, insert bar chart like this, and let me select here also another pivot table, insert, and use also a bar chart like this. Now I can select here the first chart, right click, cut, go to the dashboard, right click here, and paste. This one right here is gonna be just here and down below, like this. I can just split this rectangle in half. The first part is gonna be for the income, and the second one is gonna be to the outcome. Let me come back here to the analysis and also cut and paste the income chart. I'm gonna paste it here. Okay, now I can place just over the rectangle that we have, like this. Okay, I think it's good. Now the last chart that we're gonna use here is the map chart. And as we saw before, if we use the pivot table itself and to create the map chart, is not gonna work. So let's take a look here and let's try and see if it's gonna work if we use here these two columns that we created. Let me select here everything, insert, maps, and fill the map. Yeah, it's kind of looks, yeah, it's looking right maybe. Right click here, cut, and to the dashboard, right click in any cell, and then paste. I'm gonna just place the chart, the map chart just exactly over the rectangle. Like this for example, yeah. So we almost done with the charts, of course. We done because we already have all the charts in the screen, and of course it's important to save the spreadsheet. Make sure you didn't lost anything, okay? Now it's time to make some changes in the layout and in the design of each one of the charts that we have here. We can start with just read it off the background of all the charts, because of course we are not going to use this square or this rectangle with a sharp corner that we have in the charts. We're going to use the background that we created before, the rectangles with rounded corners. Let me select here that way the first chart, format, shape outline, no outline, shape fill, no fill. I'm gonna do this basically for all the charts that I have here. Format, shape outline, no outline, shape fill, no fill. I'm gonna do it for all the charts. And in order to make this video the fastest as possible, I'm gonna pause and I'm gonna just came back in 1 second. Okay, I done here. Basically read it off the area of all the charts. And that way we can see here now the rounded rectangle in the background. Now something interesting to do here is to change maybe the titles that we have in each one of the charts. So this one right here, click here again, it's gonna be, let's say, the cash in. So cash in. Another one right here is gonna be the cash out. This one right here is a map. This is the map chart, and it's showing us the cash in per state. And this one here to the left is showing us basically is a comparison in between the cash in versus cash out. Okay, now we can start to make some changes here in the charts. I'm going to start actually using make some changes in the map chart. Let me click here in this legend to the right and read it off, delete. Double click in the map, 1, 2, to make sure we can open this right panel right here. One thing that I can do here is using the map area as only regions with data, like this. Now we have a more open view or close view of the data. In the series color, I'm gonna use the lowest value as a red one, but I don't want to use actually the standard color that Excel gives to us, the red one. I want to click here in more colors, and I want to create my own, or actually I want to use maybe this head right here, okay, like this. And I'm gonna also use to the highest value a blue color, but I want to customize this color. So standard, and I'm gonna choose maybe, I think this option right here is good. Okay, like this, yeah, it's a beautiful chart. Now I can go here to the effects, shadow, and use the first option as the shadow effect, transparency 30%, blur 2, and distance also 2 or 3. 3, I think it's better. Let me come here now to the fill line, border, solid line, and I'm gonna use a white one with 1 as the width. Or, okay, I'm gonna stay with 1 in the width. Now I can close here, this right panel. We are almost done with this map chart. Something that is missing here is the value. Even though we have the colors that are showing us the highest values and the lowest one, okay, going up to the head one, up to the blue one, we can also add the values to the area of the states. So let me click in the chart, and then I can go to the chart design here to the left, add chart element, data labels, show, like this. Of course, here we are talking about currency, so I think it's a good idea to use some dollar signs here to match what we are talking about. So let me double click here in the value, 1, 2, make sure we can open this right panel. The values are not selected, so let me click here again in the values, okay? And I can go here to this last option, label option, number. Instead of using category as general, I'm going to use category as currency. And decimal places I can use 0, enter, to make the number a little bit shorter. And I can also, with the number selected, I can also increase the text size, like 10 maybe, or 11. I think 11 is better. Yeah, okay. And I can paint everyone here, put everyone in bold, and also paint everyone here in the white color, like this. Okay, I think now it's much better. The map chart is done, and we can also see through the slicer, whenever you click in any button, any option here, the map chart is automatically changed and update for us in the same way that all the other charts, okay? Now let's go here to the balance chart and make some changes here. The first change that I'm going to do is select these left values and read it off. The line in the background, the grind line, I also want to read it off. Now, because we just read it off the values that we had in the left, I think it's a good idea to place the values over the columns that we have, because that way, instead of just using the size of the column as a reference to see each one of is bigger than another one, we can actually be more precise and have also the value itself. And I'm going to place the value just over the columns. To do it, I can go to the chart design and to the left add chart element, and as the data label we're going to use outside end like this. And in the same way that we just format the map values as currency, we need to do the same thing here. 1, 2, and use, let's say, number general as currency. Decimal places 0. Okay. Now I can click in the column. Gap width, I can choose maybe 150, or even lower. I can maybe use 100% here, because that way we can make the columns a little bit thicker. I can go here to the effects. Shadow, I'm gonna use the first option as the transparency. 30%, blur 2, distance 2. Now I can go here to the fill and line. Border, I'm gonna use a solid one, and a color, a black one. And or instead of using solid, I want to use a gradient line. I think it's gonna be good here. Let me go here to the gradient stops and read it off the maximum as I can. So I'm gonna remove the gradient stops. This one here, left, is gonna be to the left, and another one is gonna be to the right. The right one is gonna be in the black color and 100% of transparency. And the left one is gonna be also in a black color, but the transparency is gonna be 0. The width, I can choose 1, for example, and I can go here, type, line, and direction. The second option right here, linear down, or we have the black color in the top and the white one at the bottom. Okay. Now instead of using the blue as the fill of the column, I can click in fill and choose solid fill. Here, I'm gonna, instead of using blue, I'm gonna click more colors and I'm gonna choose a yellow one, but maybe some custom color like this, or like this, or this. I think this one is good. Okay, and I can close. And the second chart is done. Okay, it's good. Maybe I can make the borders a little bit thicker. Double click, click in the fill and line, border. Instead of use maybe width as 1, I can use 1.5 or 1.25. Yeah, maybe it's better, 1.25. Another chart that we can change now is this area chart right here. But before we do it, we actually gonna use an area chart or a line chart over the area chart. And to do this chart, we basically need to use a combo chart in Excel. That is, two different charts, or when you combine, take 2, 3, 4 or more different charts and put it together and band it together. We can do it, it's already here, of course, the combo chart. We are using two areas chart, but instead of using two areas chart, we're going to use one as area and the second one as line. Before we do it, let me read it off this grind line here in the background, delete, and also this legend that we have right here. Okay, right click in the chart, change chart type, combo, and cash in I'm gonna use as area, cash out I'm gonna use as line. Okay, like this. Now let me double click in the blue area, 1, 2. I'm gonna click here, fill and line, border, saw gradient line. I'm gonna, as the same way we did before, I'm gonna read it off and just stick with 2. The left one is gonna be a green color, and the right one is also be a green color, but instead of just be green, it's gonna have 100% of transparency. And the type is gonna be linear, and direction is gonna be the green at the top and the white color or the transparent one at the bottom. Maybe the width we can change to 1.25. Yeah, I think it's good. Now the fill, I'm gonna use also a gradient fill, but here I'm gonna make something different. Instead of using the standard green that Excel gives to us, I'm gonna change it and use a custom color here, such as this one right here, maybe, or this one right here, or this one. There's such many different colors here that I can actually use this one. I think this one is good. Okay, and this one here to the right, I'm gonna use the same color. Okay, but the one to the right is, of course, again, transparency is gonna be 100%. Type is gonna be linear, and direction is gonna be the second option, the green at the top and the white at the bottom. I can close it now. And as you guys can see, the chart is much better. Now this orange line right here, I can change the color, 1, 2, to a head one, for example. So let's start with the effects shadow. I'm gonna select the first option. And as we did many times before, transparency 30%, blur and distance equal to 2. And here, the line, I'm gonna choose solid line and the head option that Excel gives to us, like this. And one interesting thing is here, it's smooth line. I can choose this option right here. Now it's much better. I can close this panel and we're done with our chart right here. Let me make it move a little to see the change. Yeah, it's good. The chart is much better, I think. Now, the charts that are missing here, some chains, are the cash in and the cash out. I'm gonna read it off, these background lines and also the values. I'm gonna do the same thing here to the cash out chart. Now the cash in chart here, I can double click here. The gap width, I can maybe use 75% or even maybe 100, okay? And the cash out, this one needs to be lower in order to match with the thickness of the cash in. Maybe I think 70 is good. I can put shadow for these two charts. And as we did many times before, transparency is equal to 30%, blur and distance is equal to 2. I'm going to do basically the same thing to the chart, the cash in. 2 in blur, 2 in distance, and transparency 30%. Now the cash in is going to have, let's say, a border that can be a gradient, and as it's a cash in, we usually use a green color. So I'm gonna do here a gradient as we did before using a green color to the both sides, but the one in the right is gonna be, it's gonna has 100% of transparency. And linear, the type, and the direction, now I'm gonna choose this option right here, linear left. And the width, I'm gonna stick with 1.25. I'm gonna do something similar here to the cash out, but Instead of using green, I'm going to use, of course, head. The both gradient stops here. The both points is going to be head, but as you guys know, the one to the left is going to be 100% transparency. Linear, the type, and the direction is going to be the same as we did before, linear left. And the width, 1.25. Now I can go here to the fill and choose solid fill and use a custom color, or actually I can use the same color as we use here to the map chart, this head one. And the caching chart, I can also choose the fill as a solid fill and use the same blue as the map chart, like this, for example, or maybe not blue, but a green color. The same green as we use to the area chart, for example, like this. And we're done. So this is the dashboard that we created. I think these lines right here are too thick here. So too thick, double click here. Let's make it a little bit less thicker. I don't know the opposite of thicker. Width, I'm gonna choose 1 or 1.75 like this, and yeah guys, we're done. So this is our dashboard in Excel. We just basically take a raw data set, build many different pivot tables, and this is the final result, a cash flow dashboard in Excel that you can use, of course, into your presentations, into your reports. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you have any questions or any suggestions, let me know, comment down below, and I see you tomorrow. As every day has a new video, I see you there. And, okay, maybe I missed something here. The cash in and the cash out chart in Excel is missing something. Both doesn't have here and got the values. So I think it's important to input here the values. Let me click in the first chart, chart design here to the left, add chart element, and data label, I'm going to choose the option inside base, like this. I'm going to do the same thing to the second chart. Chart design, add chart element, data label inside base. But as we are talking about here currency, maybe double click and use some $sign. Number, general, currency, decimal places equal to 0. And I'm going to do the same thing to the chart above. Currency here, decimal places equal to 0. And yeah, now we're done, finally done 100%. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and don't forget to just save this spreadsheet and to subscribe to my channel, okay? And I see you tomorrow because every day has a new video.